What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team.
Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We help each other make progress on our goals. Mr. Ray, and I apologize to everybody. I'm still sick. I got some sort of nasty sinus infection, but it's all good. And Ray, what's going on, brother?
Hey man, I'm good. I'm good today. My birthday was on Wednesday, 47 years old. So some of the guys in the group weren't even born when you and I started these sessions, Wes, it feels like. But yeah, I am living proof that you're never too old to make mistakes and learn from them, to start again or to continue. And so I don't know, maybe I've been feeling kind of like my depression spiking lately. And I don't know if maybe the birthday has something to do with it. You know how birthdays sometimes they're an opportunity to party, but they're also an opportunity to think, oh geez, like all my friends are more successful than I am. I think we may have even talked about this last time. I'm 1 year closer, Arjuna says, to what, Arjuna? To meeting my dad in heaven? Is that what you're saying? Anyway, so a dear friend of mine, Cindy, is doing like a joint birthday party tomorrow, and I just have not been up for it. I did a super casual birthday with my daughter and I. We got some burgers and fries, and like she on Uber Eats, and she got the fries like supreme, which is they just take a hamburger and they crumble it over the fries. Genius idea. I don't know why I didn't think of it. And then we just watched a bunch of Grey's Anatomy reruns. It was great. It was, ice cream and cookies, ice cream cookie. And like I was saying earlier to you, Wes, of course they bought more ice cream than was required. They weren't sure what flavor I wanted, so they got 3 tubs. And I've just been hitting that like a raccoon, for the past couple of days. So I have been getting my steps in. I did 25,000 steps yesterday. So I
25,000.
But I think I would have to walk to the moon and back to make up for all the ice cream I've been eating. But yeah, so that's what's going on with me. And but again, because of the depression, I haven't really been involved in terms of the joint birthday that Cindy and I want to do. And so I was talking to my AA sponsor, and he was like, well, on her end, it might feel like you just don't care, which isn't the case, So like, I think I have to communicate to her that I've had the blues lately, and it's not that I don't care about her or our friendship or this party. And Michael, my sponsor, gave me an interesting framework to think about. And it is, I know how you like the rule of threes, right? So this one is awareness, acceptance, and then action, right? Awareness. It's not that I'm a jerk who's ignoring my friend. It's just that I have been depressed. Acceptance. It's okay that I was depressed. That's a valid reason to call my friend and tell her that I've been out of the loop. And then action. The party's tomorrow, so there's still lots of time to help. So what do you think of that framework? Awareness, acceptance, action, for the kind of things that have been kind of like a boogeyman in our imagination, or things that have been affecting us that we've been avoiding.
I like word acceptance. I like the framework. I love frameworks. These quick little, short step ways of thinking that when you practice them, can really, really accelerate progress, in my opinion. I mean, the amount of times we have to make decisions throughout the day, it's very similar to a jiu-jitsu or a basketball or whatever sport, right? Where it's not just understanding that the move exists, it's that using the move so much it gets into your muscle memory. So that's my comment on frameworks in general. The word acceptance I really like, because accepting something versus agreeing with it, I think, is an important distinction. Can you come to accept something without agreeing with something? And I think in running a family and running a business, and probably even with friends, is really important. Hey, I accept what you did or are doing. I don't agree with it, but I don't have to agree with it. So I like that idea. And then, of course, the action. I am going to nudge on you a little bit about whether or not to participate in your birthday party, because similar to the other framework of mood follows action, I would shocked your mood does not increase in following the action, especially when that action submerges you in people that love you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess that is the antidote to depression. That is my guess. I know nothing about it, and also we're going to bring up Andrew in a few minutes here, because he reached out to me on Discord and wanted to chat about it, and I believe he's here. So anyway, and it was the same thing. He wanted to talk, I think, about some things that he was dealing with. But Ray, please keep going.
Yeah, man. And so and for me, isolation is the kind of the worst expression of these kind of feelings, whether it's addiction or depression. These are things that kind of squeeze you out of your community and isolate you so that they can really ravage you, right? And so I think you are right that the action is, and I've been feeling that lately, where I don't feel like I went to 2 different art events yesterday, didn't feel like going, just tried to come up with all kinds of excuses not to go, but of course felt really kind of pumped up for having gone, and got a lot of love from my community while I was out there. And and so, like everything else, it is a practice, keeping good communication is also a practice. Wes, do you, I don't know if you found, the cliche is that the younger the person is, the less they actually speak on the phone, the more they just text, right? But I don't, that may be true, but I think it's also true that all of us, or most of us in this day and age, kind of will fall prey to that, can fall to the lowest common denominator of communication, which is text, as opposed to the format where you can be most vulnerable, most descriptive, most effective, which is voice to voice, right? And so voice to voice is something. So isn't it interesting that you can actually remain isolated and still correspond with people if you only do it by text? Voice to voice is something that is a practice, and that that's something else that comes to mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know this sounds weird, but what comes up for me is when you talk about compressing something into a pill versus eating the actual fruit. It might, on a label, it might look like you get all the vitamin C, but if you lack the water content, the fiber content, all the other phytochemicals that go along with the fruit. So yeah, I think it's the same thing for communication. There's different layers, invisible layers. I would even actually argue, right, probably, obviously, in my opinion, the best is going to be in person.
Yes.
And the more we remove ourselves from that, the more you have to, in my opinion, intentionally combat it.
Yeah. And so I recently switched AA sponsors. My previous one was really just a very academic guy who just read the book with me, and the guy I've got now, just because of what I'm going through in my life, like he's way more hands-on, and so I appreciate that kind of coaching of a sort much better. And so, in order to break up with my previous sponsor, it's something I did face to face, and it went really well. And you're right, like but on the scale of like, there's a kind of sliding scale of misinterpretation, right? The risk of misinterpretation, and I suppose like text has the highest rate of misinterpretation as compared to voice and in person. And I think you would probably say it's because of all those like nonverbal cues, right?
Yeah.
That help you effectively and accurately communicate the message. So in person, you can really accurately express sarcasm, roasting, ribbing, and humor. But if you try to do that via text, especially without an emoji, it can very easily come across as just an insult.
100%. This is often why, I guess, only to iPhone users, because to those Android users, it's just a little too high of a barrier to entry for me to send an audio text message, because in the iPhone it's native, and then also send a video text as well. But also, right, I think when it comes to human communication, excuse me, there is also an element of real-time pressure when you and I are talking in person. Even if I say something you don't like, there's a barrier to you, like throwing your napkin down, getting up from the restaurant, storming out, etc. There's a pressure for you to hang in there, to let us go through that little bit of a J curve of that part of the discussion. Versus on a text message, it's like that Aziz Ansari joke of like, you ever talk to a girl, you text her, she texts you back, you text her, she texts you back, you text her, she texts you back, and then you say, hey, you want to get dinner? And then she doesn't respond, and so it's like, in text messages, we all know what it feels like to send that important text across the ship, and then there's just radio silence on the other end, and then you're stuck in like this unbelievable like mental hell, wondering whether or not it landed. Did he or she get the text? Oh my gosh, she hates me, like all that stuff. So I think there's this glue that happens when you're in person.
Yeah, and to borrow your phrase, it's easier to close the loop, right, in person. And I'm also picturing, like, in terms of your ship analogy, I'm picturing like you're in a tiny little rowboat and she's the big ship, and like when it comes time to, hey, can I board? And then there's no answer, right? And so you're just like, you're stuck like on the ocean, like just in your tiny rowboat with like not knowing whether you can board the ship. Yeah. Yeah, but it's funny, and it's like there's an inverse relationship, right, too, going on, right, where the most effective form of communication is the hardest one to do because you have to coordinate schedules and get there, right? And the most ineffective communication is the easiest one to do, which is just tapping the screen, tapping your phone. But maybe that's kind of actually logical, that the hardest one to do ends up the most effective, right? Because I think that probably plays out over and over again in life, right? Where the hard thing to do and the right thing to do are usually the same thing to do.
Well, and there's this like graph I'm looking at in my head, like this XY axis. I think that's where the phone, I think, takes the cake for everything else, because it's just the right mix of speed and accuracy. It doesn't have the most accuracy, but it has a large chunk of it, but it's way faster than anything else. You can get on the phone with 15 people before you can even get to finish the lunch, in person.
Yeah.
So I think there's an element there. But if you're down for it, why don't we add Andrew to the list here? I'm going to run and grab a tissue while you greet him, if that's okay, because my nose is pretty heavy here. But
Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
And Arjuna, I see that you're in the chat. Can you confirm like whether or not you got married the other day? I don't know. I couldn't remember if you were referring. He did, eh? He confirmed that?
Yeah, but you took the spotlight with your birthday.
Well, I'm okay.
So congratulations, Arjuna. I say congratulations to him. I don't know if Ray did or not.
I was too busy.
Pardon my partner's manners here, Arjuna.
No, I was sorry, Wes. I was too busy reading out my Amazon wish list that all you guys can buy me. Right. But yeah. You only have one 47th birthday. Marriages, you can have multiple. Yeah. What's up, dude, Andrew? Looking sharp as hell.
You look like Justin Timberlake, dude.
You know, I actually used to get that in college, so that's a good flashback. Yeah, had been a while, but used to hear it every now and again. So what's going on, guys? How you all doing?
What's up, dude?
I don't mean to be rude, but I have a sinus infection. I'm going to go blow my nose. I'll be right back.
No, totally.
Tell us what's on the wall behind you in the frames.
Oh, it's like my diplomas and stuff. I'm in my office right now just because it's like in the middle of my workday, so I figured I'd just take it from here. But I got like my diplomas in the back. It's like a cool industrial brick building. My firm's been in this location for about 3 or 4 years now. It's been great. But
what part of the country you calling in from?
The Mitten State, Michigan.
Nice. I used to live in Michigan.
As a matter of fact, I got Michigan swag right there. Yeah, right. I'm a national title winner for 1 year, so I'm going to enjoy it, even though I absolutely had nothing to do with it. But passively monitoring it is sometimes valuable enough.
Yeah, dude, you're putting the energy into the universe. Which has an incalculable kind of effects. You never know. What part of Michigan are you in?
It's actually West Michigan. So 95% of the times when you meet people, it's from like Metro Detroit. But the other, anybody looking to come live in a place that is really super easy to live still, it's fairly inexpensive. There's tons of shit to do, and it's freaking beautiful all the time. Check out West Michigan, man. There's plenty of stuff over here. It used to be like really, really, not that there's anything wrong with this, but a lot of people used to be turned off by the fact that it was 20, 25 years ago, super, super religious. But now it's a diverse place like anything else.
Yeah, man. I've been to Holland, Michigan, which is gorgeous. Oh, yeah. It's on the lake there, and man, I lived in Michigan for a couple of years. I love it there. And so, are you a lawyer or what? I'm picking up lawyer vibes on the wall there.
Yeah, no, it's like I think we're the only people that display our diplomas, and I have no idea why. It's so weird.
No,
I have like a piece of paper that goes on the wall. No, yep, I'm an attorney.
Right on, dude. Right on. So, Wes, you want to tee off the conversation that you had online with Andrew?
Yeah, and Andrew, I want to be 100% respect your boundaries and all that stuff. And obviously, this stuff is on YouTube, posted, blah blah blah. So I want to make and by the way, we record this. So if you say anything that you regret, we can easily just delete the whole episode. Because seriously, our primary goal here is to serve, all of us men, and that will always be the number one goal. So from what you said on the Discord, why don't you tee it off, and then if you don't mind, we can go round table. And then just by the way, is your thumbnail? Did you play football? I couldn't see the thumbnail on Discord. Okay, there's some sort of helmet or something going on. Okay, got it.
No, that's JJ McCarthy from he's a Michigan Wolverine. No, I played football a very long time ago, and any potential for me to have been at a Division I school was not going to happen. So no, not my jam. But no.
All right, so why don't you tee it off, brother, if you're open to it?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Really recently, I've been almost coming to the realization, and this is one of the things, Ray, something that you said a little bit earlier really resonated with me when you talked about this pattern of, I think you said it was awareness, acceptance, and action. It's the awareness piece that really started to trigger. Don't get me wrong, I noticed I've been tremendously depressed lately. And where I noticed it was it doesn't, and I think that this is probably because I really try to focus hard on showing up and doing the best that I can and, fulfilling all my responsibilities. But where I notice it is not affectively, that is to say, like, I'm not sitting around feeling sad. I really don't. If you ask me, like, legitimately, I would tell you, I don't feel like anything's wrong in my life or that I'm sad. But what I was noticing was it's little shit. And it's like, hey, why are we vacuuming the house once a week instead of every other day? Like, why are we, where are some other pieces where I noticed and observed it? Why are there times where my assistant will text me and say, hey, XYZ, this person, your client needs a call back, and I'll wait until the next day? Why are there times where I'm skipping workouts? Why are there times where, I caught myself the other day just like watching TV, and straight up, unless it's been like a sporting event, I don't think I've watched TV in since I was like a freaking kid. So these are little pieces where just like over time, you're like, oh man, like this isn't firing quite right. And I've also noticed other things too, just like, the challenge I think for me is immediately when I don't do those things, I know my inclination is to go to the voice inside my head, like, oh, well, you're not vacuuming the rug because you're a piece of shit. Or, oh, you're not calling your client back because you're lazy or whatever. And that's just it's a snap judgment and it flicks in. And then unfortunately, if you think about it, like that's sort of an action limiting thought, because if I just am lazy or just a piece of shit or just a dirty dude, like then nothing's going to change. Then it's just like, it's almost a weird way of like actually shortcoming the effort to work through it. So for me, it's like that moment where I'm like, oh, wait, whoa, no, I think there's actually something that's wrong here. And I think I can actually probably do something about it. But I was going to say I have to, but I don't have to, actually. I just want to. And that's the place where I'm kind of coming from. And it's been a couple of months now. And one of the things that I was talking a little bit about the Discord, I had a brutal situation. I lost I was chairing a federal jury trial, and we lost. And straight up, I mean, we got beat bad. I mean, it was a big old L. And I love about my job that I have a job where there are winners and losers, but losing is more bad than winning is good by a metric fuck ton. And that was my experience. It's a little bit embarrassing for me to honestly admit that. I'd love to be able to do what I told everybody that I did and say, hey, 3 days later, like, no, we got to survive in advance. Just like you're like given like a post-game athlete interview. We just got to look forward to the next one, and just got to keep improving day by day. And like, don't get me wrong, I do think that those things are true, but no, I knew that it was affecting me. It definitely was like an acute period for a while, but I mean, no, it's been several months out and I'm still feeling it. And I do know that it's normal in the process from having talked with other attorneys, but at the same time, it's beginning to interfere with my goals and my priority list. And like, I don't want to do that anymore. I just really don't. I'm 38, 37, 38. So I'm halfway done. So what I need to do is really focus on just making sure like that I use the time as best I have. And I'm also a dad too. So I need to plug in and be there, but I don't know, Wes, if that answered the question or if that was too long winded, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Oh, dude, it was spot on. I'm going to throw it over to Ray because I've got my thoughts. If you don't mind, Andrew, we'll go roundtable. And like we always say, none of this is advice. It's just helpful to have a roundtable discussion. And what Ray and I owe you is what exactly comes up for us, which I don't know about you guys, but I've done individual therapy before at the request of my girlfriend, and couples therapy. And one of the things that really drove me crazy, so we've probably, I don't know, gone through 3 or 4 therapists at this point. None of them would give us like, what's coming up for you? Like, don't ask me another question. Tell me what you think about my answer, right? And I won't put you in a position of telling you you're right or wrong, even though a therapist, I feel like, should be able to bring some sort of value to the table. But that was my experience. So opposite of that, like, I want to know when I bring something to the table is like, hey, what do you guys think about it? And it's up to me to say what's useful, what's not. So that's what we owe you. And Ray, let me throw the ball over to you, brother. What's coming up for you? Sorry, Ray was checking his email. Can you repeat your whole story?
I was checking my lottery numbers, Wes. Okay, not my email. But no, I got all that, Wes. I heard every moment of it. And Andrew, thank you for being so vulnerable and honest. You're a very effective communicator. And Wes, what comes up for me is that Andrew falls short. He falls short of the standard of perfection. Okay? He's got a job, he's got clients, he's got kids, he's handsome as hell, but he's not perfect.
Nice.
And so I think that that is, and there's, what comes up for me specifically is there's this kind of confirmation bias in his inner monologue that is like, you know, when he waits that 24 hours to call the person back, that inner voice says, you never call people back, right? And so, and when you don't get a win professionally, like there's that, whatever that voice says, you'll never do it, or you can't do this. And so I think that and again, what is the effect of that inner monologue, that committee in his head? It isolates him, right? And so very relatable, Andrew, what you're going through. Again, also, like, because the Canadian and Michigan weather is so similar, this is typically the time where the winter blues wear off, right? Because it's finally nice again. So you're thinking, what the heck? Like, this is the last time of the year that I should be feeling these things. And so that might be why the kind of like the alarm was sounding. Yeah, Wes. So like, so that's what comes up for me. Like, he definitely falls short of the standard of perfection, but that's not the standard we should be holding ourselves up to. And yet, I think Andrew requires more than just a pat on the back saying like, hang in there, Tiger. That if there is something going on in terms of his chemistry, then absolutely, you know, the awareness, the acceptance, and then the action is required. Awareness, he's got. Acceptance, you know, Michigan guys are very macho, and so like, I don't know how hard it is for a Michigander to accept that he might need help, especially if that help is therapy, especially if that help is some kind of like Prozac or something, which is what I take. I'm sure he would prefer to deadlift his way out of this, but sometimes that is not that's not the medicine that's required. Wes is bawling his eyes out, Andrew. This is bringing up a lot of stuff for him. Wes, do you need a minute?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
So what comes up for me is, number one, I can relate a lot to what you're saying. If I'm going through the mental checklist in my head, you know, you look like Justin Timberlake, you dress well, you've got an outstanding profession, you got a radio FM DJ voice, you know, nice. You're super competitive. You've got all of that stuff. My next question or set of questions would be like, are you following our scorecard or a similar type of scorecard where all the basics are in, right? Like sleep, sunlight, exercise, hydration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I just discovered that, and that is a great resource. It's funny how many of the things that there are on it I've always tracked, and I started doing this maybe like 4 years ago or so. I'm a data psycho, so I try to like accumulate like my weird record keeping and statistics. But anyway, what I do is I use a really simple system where I balance out three things. Like, did I actually act in terms of what my priorities are today? Overall, thumbs up, thumbs down. Did I get done with the stuff that I need to do? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Did I treat people well, especially, my daughter and my girlfriend? How'd that go? Thumbs up, thumbs down. And then I give myself overall a rating of, up, down, or sideways for each day. That's what I do. That's the way I used to do it.
Love it.
But I actually like having a system that is more action based as opposed to just one that kind of keeps track of status, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I think it's really valuable. I haven't used it yet, but I'd like to start next week, and let's rock it out. Let's see if it's good. Ray, the only other thing too, yeah, no, I'm actually, and if you would have asked me at 27, 28, I would have told you that I would never do it, but I'm actually a big proponent of therapy. And, I found that it was really useful for me. You got to have the right fit. And you got to find somebody that, that actually is like listening to you and communicating with you in a way that is effective for you. Because the last thing that I want to do is just be in a room hearing myself talk. But, what I guess I would say about that is, you're right, by the way. It is really hard for me to acknowledge in particular that, I need help. And one of the things that I really needed to do, I realized is, I have some professional mentors that are men, but I mean, we're busy as shit right now. And one of the things I really realized I needed to do that actually brought me here and helped me find you guys was figuring out, like, I need to talk to other dudes about this too. Not because I hesitate to even say, like, I don't know why that is, but I feel like that perspective is sometimes difficult. Sometimes I feel like, especially my therapist is a woman, and she's great. I really, really like her. It's really effective. It's working well. Sometimes I do need to translate shit before I even am able to describe the problem. And I'd prefer to just not to be able to do that. That's more convenient for me. So, but it's hard. And, I definitely had the thing where, like, I signed up for the Discord and it's like, introduce yourself. And I was like, well, I'm definitely not doing that. I was like, no, might as well just give it a shot. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, man. It's the same in 12-step recovery. And probably it's like the whole modus operandi of group therapy is probably like what you just said, where it's like, when you can talk to people who are going through it together, there is a identification that goes on, and like when you're it's a lot when you're in a circle of men like you are now, it's harder to get hung up on the differences and discount and set out the voices, like, because we're all men here. I think it's easier and faster to see the similarities and to, like, fight off that isolation. And that's what comes up for me.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball if you don't mind. It's because it's so funny, Andrew. One of the things that you said was, like, which I had thought recently as well. So I measure my TV usage in terms of units. That's just how I think it in my head. It's like, how many TV units did I get in? And I pride myself on having almost absolutely 0 units of TV usage, basically ever, unless my girlfriend's with me, etc. And I found myself wanting to turn on the TV. This was a few weeks ago. And I instantly said to myself, what the fuck am I doing? Like, don't you dare touch that button. Like, so I'm saying that because I can relate to, right, like, the awareness of some of these things where I catch my brain saying, like, hey, remember that you said you want to reach the pinnacle of what you define as your career, your life, etc. And the TV for you is not congruent with that. No. As a classic saying, like, how many times have you seen a commercial for Ferraris? You haven't, So there's something there. And I know the typical response here would be, yeah, like, take it easy on yourself and so on. And I agree with some caveats. It's like, if you want to be the Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or LeBron or whatever, but Tom Brady in your field, in your life, etc., there's a reason that we respect those people. And the reason is because we intrinsically know the sacrifices it takes to get there. And yeah, it's hard. And if you're a competitor and you had a very big loss, in my opinion, I would actually not label you as a competitor if you didn't care about that loss at length. And I think that length, it could totally be understandable if it's for a very long time. No different than if Tom Brady loses a Super Bowl the year prior, he's probably a bit upset about it until he wins his next one. And if he goes out on a loss, right, he's probably eternally upset about it, in my opinion. I don't think there's a psychologist on earth that would say that that's healthy. However, I would say for the game that he is playing, it is perfectly healthy because that's what makes him fucking him, in my opinion. And what comes up for me as you're talking is like, yeah, when you set standards to yourself and you don't meet them, for your brother, I would say, or if I were talking to myself, it's like, yeah, I should fucking be upset about that. And I don't care if it's as silly as, or if other people consider it as silly as vacuuming my place every other day, because that's my standard. And I think where guys have those standards can run into trouble is when they start to talk to other people who don't have that same level of standard. And that's okay. It's just might just be like Tom Brady asking for advice from somebody who's not playing at the same level in that particular sport. This is not a judgment on human character, on anything other than like, well, what are the standards that you set for yourself? And if there's a distance between the standards that you set yourself and your actual right action, then I think there should be some disruption to your emotional state. Now, I think at that fork in the road, there's a decision. And this is where I think it's helpful. It's like, make a fucking decision on, do you want to keep on playing that higher level game or do you not? And if you don't, then you have to mourn. You have to kind of like mourn the shedding of your old self, you know? But if you do, then you have to mourn the fact that your asses shouldn't be sitting there watching TV every day, you know? And I think that's some like tough love that I need to get for sure at times, right? And it's like, rather than coddling each other, which I do think, oh, of course, right? It's like, that's what this team is for. It's like, hey man, we're all going through that. Shit sucks, right? But I will never fight for the lesser version of you or me or Ray, you know? And I'd rather fight for the ideal perfection. I don't care what anybody tells me about that, right? Oh, you're shooting for perfection. Yeah, I fucking am. What, like, so what? And yes, I am perpetually semi-satisfied, which means I'm perpetually dissatisfied with a portion of my action. So I don't know.
And definitely,
again, that's not advice.
That resonates huge with me, especially from the perspective of, okay, so this is me going on a limb, because obviously the guy's a whack job for a lot of reasons, but there's a Ted Kaczynski Unabomber thing that he says in his like crazy treatise that actually, it was one of those things where when I read it, I'm like, I can't ever tell anybody where this idea comes from. But he said there's one thing to make people happy, and that's finding a goal, working toward the goal, achieving the goal, setting new goal, and then it's a pattern. And he calls it the power process. And it's like, okay, well, what I need to do is carefully conceal that I ever read that treatise from anybody that matters in my life. And then on top of it, try to adopt that, because I think that that's probably right. And on that end, you know, the other thing too, this is also a great point, Wes, which was that the concept of like mourning the loss of the old skin. So I went through a huge change when I was 30. So this is when my daughter was little. I went through a divorce, and also at the same time changed the direction of my career really notably, where I said I wanted my own practice. I didn't want to work for anybody else. And I did them both at the same time, which was pretty Looney Tunes. Don't recommend doing that. But, you know, what ended up happening, actually, I found one of the weird parts, I should say. I did that knowing really well, okay, well, if I'm gonna burn all this shit down, I better have a plan on what the new thing looks like, right? And I better actually be intentional about it, because that was one of the problems, was I just kind of like went on a treadmill toward my life and ended up in a place. And one of the places that was surprising is I realized, and it really had to do with the birth of my daughter. I'll say this, and you know, people will think whatever they want to think about me, and that's fine. But I would rather be a legendary dad than a legendary lawyer. Now, I'd rather be a legendary lawyer than literally anything else in my life. And I've had the conversation before with my girlfriend, where it's like, unfortunately, you're third. But like, that's just, I mean, that is the case. It's like, that is my priority list. And what was funny was, before that, I was always 100% of the time, I prided myself on, I billed the most hours every year as an associate at my old firm, which is like a mega super McDonald's firm, you know, and like, I did it the most. And I realized when I made the transition that I had built an identity around that when it went away, it was actually kind of sad. in a sense, because I'm like mourning that something is gone, even though I knew what I wanted to do, which was to replace it with, having flexibility. Now, the benefit, what I found is that actually by just streamlining priorities, what it did was it got rid of a lot of other crap, and then I ended up being better at, all of my 5 major priorities. But it does, there is a mourning process associated with that. And, part of it too is that, I agree with you completely. I mean, I've got to keep moving with stuff, and that's where I'm starting to notice, because like the way that I'm feeling it feels like I'm moving in molasses now, whereas before it used to come real natural. It felt like running, but and and on that note too, and I just lost my train of thought. I lost the thread a little bit. Oh no, the other big thing really was, at least for me, here's the main problem that I'm having, which I'm embarrassed to admit because I consider myself like a pretty effective person. Like, my procrastination's getting bad, dude. And I've read that procrastination is trying to avoid pain. And I think that I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'm guessing that probably that has a connection with having taken a big L. And now I'm in this zone where I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to do that again. Can I absorb another one of those? Something like that is like in the back of my mind. But procrastination then helped me avoid an L. Just not. I mean, it's like making everything worse. And I've always been a little on the, I think lawyers by nature we tend to overthink shit. That's kind of our job, actually. But it's hard, for sure. Yeah, I need strategies for that too, especially because that shit has to stop. And I know it's tough, but I just got to dive in, I think.
Yeah, here's what I think, and again, none of this comes from a place of academia or professional credentials to even comment on this, but like, no different than Jordan Peterson talking about the lobsters and serotonin levels and when one lobster loses and so on. It's, as men, I think we're challenged like at points in time where your biology has already seeming to make the decision for you of like, no, God, how about this, man? You sit down, let the bigger man take that level of the hierarchy. And I say, no fucking way, right? Like I don't, like, there's no fucking way. I don't care how many times I've lost. I don't care how bad I feel about myself. I don't care how bad my DNA tells me not to fight again. I refuse to do it. And this is not something like battling my chest. I do think heuristically, I think as men, we need to have simple battle cries that are never to be tested and never to be tainted. Very similar to like Leonidas and the Spartan 300 of like, never retreat, never surrender. We can do a lot of other things. Maybe we can reform our formation of our soldier pattern. We can do these other things. But 2 things that are on the table to never come off, right? We never retreat and we never surrender. That's it. So I wouldn't be surprised if your biology is telling you, hey, no, man, you're just meant to sit at this 3rd rung of the ladder here. Just stay there. Watch some TV, right? It can happen once a week. You're fine. I just don't fucking believe that. Right? Like I don't think anybody lands. One second, sorry, but I don't think anybody accidentally lands as the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I don't think anybody accidentally makes $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million a year, et cetera, et cetera. I think it is a very active deselection process along those rungs of those ladders, right? Just note, like, and if for proof, don't listen to me, but look at Elon Musk. I think he said that the reason he is successful is he's willing to endure more pain than he knows of anybody else on this planet. And it's up to us. Do you want to play the Elon game? Do you want to play, what games do you want to play? And I think that's the other part here of like, I think more us men, oftentimes we are agonized because of undefined games. Did you fucking define the games that you want to play? Because if you haven't, and I mean like written down, right? Like, have you written down the 4 or 5 games that you want to play, and then knowing that that's going to come at the expense of not playing any other games, because when you partially play games, you suck shit at all of them. Yeah. And this is where I think it's like, we've all probably been, or a lot of us have been in that situation where you're going to get back with an ex-girlfriend because your brain forgot how shitty they were. because you're battling with the pain right now of, let's say, being single, right? And then your brain is conveniently remembering all of the good things and forgetting all of the bad things. So I think having a written down situation is really important. No different than in this case. It's like, what games do I want to play? These are the games that I want to play and win. And by the way, if you're not winning them, that's because they're really hard games, which means they're worth it to play, right? And then so it's like when you get these forks in the road, it's like, nope, I'm going to stick to my game, or I'm not. But at least it's a deliberate, intentional process. So I'm sorry, Ray. Go ahead, brother.
What I was going to say wasn't much better than that. And we're getting so many clips for YouTube out of Wes just like going off. Like, I want to thank you for putting a landmine under his seat cushion today, because you got him fired up. A couple of things that come to mind are like mental health is an important part of optimal performance, right? And so just what I'm hearing from you and from Wes and synthesizing it is like you have been tested by losing this case, right? And so your choices are quitting and going to work at the Steak and Shake, or like identifying this case as a battle and not the war, right? And I think that your resilience is required in order to carry on, right? And so there's something now. I learned of a mental health term. This was about 15 years ago now. So it would mean something they'd use a very different title today, but I think what you are experiencing is transition disorder, right? Which is you're like, this is when I think I was either fired from my job in New York at a law firm, or I failed the New York bar, and it plunged me into a depression. I can imagine politicians who lose an election get plunged into a depression, right? It's because there is such a transition from the security to the insecurity, right? That depression is like an automatic biological reaction. And so, Wes, I have to jump off the call before the end, but you said writing down, and I think that maybe you could come up with a couple of recommendations for Andrew in terms of how to assist him in this transition from, let's just call it for brevity's sake, always winning, to having to taking an L. And although like probably getting divorced was a kind of an L, or felt like that, and that was probably a transition. Having a daughter instead of a son was probably a transition you had to occur. That was a joke. We're not in China. We can't kill them. We have to raise them. I have a daughter as well. She's 11. She's my best friend. Daughters rule. They're way cleaner and less Godzilla-like than we were when we were growing up. So Wes, what are some strategies in terms of navigating the texture of having like a life that includes wins and losses? And so I just identified a couple of those losses on my own. And also like in sales, I experienced in sales, probably one of the benefits is that I experience losses and wins at a much greater frequency. Right? So Wes, I have to go, but can you please, I think writing was something that you alluded to, but can you please suggest a couple of strategies in terms of navigating the textured life of wins and losses?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the prerequisite, in my opinion, is defining what those standards are and formally defining. So like in terms of writing exercise, like let's define it, again, getting back to that same game. I mean, I don't know about you, Andrew, but like the amount of times that my standards are questioned, like I look at the way you're dressed, right? So like semi-spread point collar, your collar's probably about an inch to an inch and a quarter. I love that style. You got, is it a single Windsor tie, dimple in the middle, like all that? I can tell you're a specific guy. Like, so even when it comes to like when I used to wear collars and collar shirts and everything, and I used to tell the guys who would make my shirts, like, I want double reinforced down to the third button of my shirts, et cetera. And they used to argue with me and say, well, that's a little overkill. It's like even to that level, right? Like of I didn't ask you for your opinion about my standards, right? What I'm telling you, I'm communicating to you are my standards. And these guys are great guys, right? But I'm just giving you the example, right? Like, if you don't stand for your standards, then expecting other people to, including your therapist, my opinion, right? That is a game that we as men are going to lose. Once you get into higher rungs of the ladder, if you are not committed to working with professionals at that same level, then you are going to downgrade your average, in my opinion, right? And these people are going to be well-intentioned. It has nothing to do with character. It's everything to do with like that. They're coming from that world experience. But if you were to ask the killers that you probably admire, right, you could just imagine what they would tell you. So I don't know, man. I think it's so important for you to take some time this weekend, and I'll do the same, right? Because every time I give a piece of advice, I want to say, okay, can I polish up my own stuff? Of like, what's my standard? What are my standards? What are the games that I want to play? And do I have a gap right now between them? And decide on whether or not I want to make up the distance of that gap. And also coming to grips with the fact that you probably never will. But I'd rather die knowing that I didn't reach perfection and I was still striving for it than die knowing that I hit 100% of my goals, but knowing that I left a shitload on the table still. Like, that's not an option. And by the way, I think if you let's face it, I do think there's a real thing as being a good father or a great father or a bad father. I think there's a thing as being an excellent attorney or a subpar attorney. As unpopular as that conversation might be, right, in certain circles, that is the reality. There's a hierarchy to basically everything. And you have to decide on where you want to play in that hierarchy. And expecting the game to be fucking easier, the higher altitude, right, is a foolish assumption. And especially like emotionally. Because I think a lot of us guys think it's like, oh yeah, I expect it to be hard. I got to get in the gym more, et cetera. But we all know that the sustainable games, they're the hardest in the emotional frontier. That's where they're really hard.
Yep, that's true. And I keep coming back to when you, I think it was you, Wes, where you said people are agonized by undefined games. Like, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. And that's what I spend most of my wheel spinning time doing, is shit that I ironically don't really even care about. That's the thing that always gets me, because there is this tendency that I have, I think maybe in a moment where I really am apt to avoid pain, to like sink my time into bullshit. And when I say bullshit, I think I actually mean stuff I do not care about. Like, I don't give a shit at all about X, Y, or Z. And and think about what I just told you about what my noticing my behaviors were. It's like, I've talked about what I'm not doing. Let's talk about what I am doing with that time. I already mentioned to you, I was like watching TV the other day. I'm like buying shit online that I don't need. I don't give a shit about it. The other day I spent a tremendous amount of time trying to find like new dinnerware for my house. Like, I give a damn about this at all. I never cared about this at any point in time in my life, and I don't really now. And I do think that actually that's important. So I gotta say, because that's really useful advice. Because the best piece of advice I ever got was when I had that big transition period in my life when I was 30. My therapist was like, no, we're going to go through and we are going to write down your priorities, and then that is going to be the guide for you. And then there's going to be a Mendoza line below which you're putting things where you're telling yourself it is okay if this gets ignored, because these things have to be sustained. And that was revolutionary for me, because I don't think I don't know, man, like maybe this is a sign that I didn't do the amount of work I needed to as a youngster or something like that. But if you would have told me like what's most important, at the time, was like having a wife and having a kid and having a career, I don't know how I would have answered that. Not because I would have been afraid to, but because I was like, oh, I guess like my kid has to. So I think I probably would have defaulted to like what I would assume other people would say, And when I actually went through that process, I think to your point though, I think that maybe really this is just a big moment for reorientation where it's just like go back to damn priorities, write them down, figure it out, because it should be really easy to figure out when I'm browsing cutlery. It should be really easy to figure out that that's not time spent being a better dad,
Yep.
being a better lawyer, being in the gym and improving my body the best that I can, being a better son, and being a better partner to my girl. I mean, and those are the places where I'm at, and it should fall really easily in that. Maybe that I think that would help me a lot, and I think that I did get away from it, and I allowed that. It's just like the default time didn't get audited.
Yep. Yeah, man. I appreciate that some of that's being absorbed. And again, it's like I'm listening to myself as well. Like I think we all, every time we have a conversation like this, it's like for us all to check up and take inventory of like, are we doing the actions that we are committed to that are congruent, right, with our North Star and with what we want to become. And I will never stand for anybody becoming less than they've decided they wanted to become. And you know, right? I could tell by just a few messages and the way you're dressed and your career of choice, et cetera, that you've decided a long time to be a killer, right? And the world's going to test you and test that decision and say, do you still want to be this? Do you still want to be this? Do you still want to be this? Not that I'm right, but I think we need more beasts in this world who are willing to say, you know what, right? Like, I know it's harder to breathe up here, but who else is going to fucking do it? And what do I want to show my daughter? You have a daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I want to show my daughter, right, the type of dad that her dad is and the type of person that she should become. I just refuse to tell you or anybody else, including myself, to be anything less than that. And to let the chips fall where they may.
Yep. No, and I mean, getting peace with that, because that's part of the process, setting priorities, right? It's getting the peace with it, that what if I actually follow my priorities? What will that mean that I will be? And it's like, well, I don't know. It'll be what it'll be as soon as you do it. And that was, I think, if I had to tell you why the rubber hit the road when somebody told me it's really about sorting out priorities, I think that would be the reason. It's because it has to do with, I don't know what my daughter is going to grow up to be. I don't know if she's going to grow up to have a good marriage and, be a mom or be a great professional or do anything, or maybe she'll be really unhappy, or maybe things won't work out. I have no idea, but I do know that to the extent I can affect it, I want to be hitting it out of the park as often as I can. And then it will be what it will be. I can only control that far about it. Same way with being an attorney, but at the same time, I just said all that stuff that I know is true. Taking an L hurts, man. It's bad.
Yeah.
And and I gotta, but I can't taking that, and you did say it also. It's like, what is the alternative? The alternative, though, if I don't pull the shit together and actually get back on the path, is actually going down a rung, and I'm not going to like that. And I've tried, by the way.
Yep.
I didn't come from like a high achieving family at all. We were blue collar folks, and not that there's anything whatsoever wrong with that, or that those people aren't high achieving. It's just like there weren't standards about doing shit ever. And what I discovered was like I'm wired this way, and I can't. I've tried being anybody else, and it doesn't work. So I got to do this.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. I mean, our stories are very, very similar. I had an interesting conversation. I'll leave it on this unless you want to go into anything else. I got a meeting to run to, but I had a very interesting conversation. I give this guy a lot of credit. He was a father, and his child was already raised. That the child's an adult, and he looked at me and he told me, he's like, I failed pretty big with raising my kid. And I sat there with him, and I think I gave him the most authentic response was like, okay, like, tell me why. And he said, I said, yeah, like, sounds like you did, right? Like there is a such thing as failure.
Mm-hmm.
And now I did give him credit for some of the things where he succeeded, as we kind of talked about his child and so on. But yeah, there were massive opportunities where he could have done better, and he didn't. where he chose not to read the books or to get the coaching or to do the things or to do all that stuff that at some point in his journey, I'm sure he had thought about and actively decided to not fucking do it. Right? Okay. That's okay. Accept the loss. Right? But don't accept the loss because it's like, oh, that's just how the scoreboard ended. The scoreboard was just the final decimal point to the paragraph, right? Like, it's like, accept the loss of like, I actively decided to not do the shit that took to get the ultimate win, you know? So I think at the end, when it's all said and done, we got to look at the games that we play. And yeah, there's going to be a score that has to be reconciled. And I think that score, especially the longer games we play, is heavily going to be in your favor if you wake up every day and you decide more often than not to do the right shit. And yes, browsing cutlery is probably not congruent with the games that you want to play. Completely agree with you. Yeah.
That makes total sense. I think that's extremely useful.
Hell yeah. Well, hey, man, I super appreciate you coming on, brother. You come on anytime you want, man.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, it's an honor to talk to somebody like yourself. And you've given me tremendous value and the team tremendous value today. So really appreciate you coming on here, bro.
No, and I appreciate you making this available. This thing is awesome. And there needs to be more shit like this, to be honest.
Hell yeah, brother. Appreciate you, man. Love you guys. I'll see you all on Monday and talk to you soon. Later, dudes.